Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be talking about what happens when your super powerful OP character suddenly has all of their powers drained away. Don't get me wrong, powers are amazing in writing, whether it's superpowers, magical powers. They can be great plot devices, they can be great tools to get you out of trouble, they can be a brilliant way to show a character's strength and also their mental agility and able to control themselves. And it's really great when, it can be a really great form of world building as well, depending on whether this character is the only one with superpowers or if they all have some kind of power but theirs is unique in some way. It's a really great device. As well as getting you out of situations, it can also guarantee that some event will not have any dire circumstances because their powerfulness is just going to let them escape in some way. It's not necessarily going to be not a MacGuffin, a Deus Ex Machina? I can't say it, but that's what it is. When you suddenly take those powers away, the entire dynamic of the story is suddenly changed. Your character has to face what has just happened, they have to figure out what's just happened, and more importantly, they have to decide what is important to them, whether they want these powers back or if there is something else that they need to fight for. But then how do they fight it? Because no powers. Broadens the horizons for a new journey, a new set of development, and just new options all around. So we're going to be looking at how powers can be taken away from your character. The first trope is that it's just a thing, and by that I mean that it is something that happens on a regular basis. Maybe your superpowers or magical powers have a limit, you can only use a certain amount of it a day. Maybe they can overexert themselves to a point where they're so exhausted that they can't manifest any kind of power, let alone the magical superhero, whatever you have kind. And that can be, when it kicks in at the wrong time, it can be a great plot device for more drama, more tension, and the potential for threat. But there isn't really much of a consequence to it, because if this is just a thing that happens and your character knows that as soon as they have some kind of short rest or some sleep, or they, sit out in the sun for a little bit, or have, one of their cans of spinach if you're Popeye, then, their powers are going to be coming back pretty soon. This trope is fun, and it also gives the character a chance to really understand their own being. They have to learn to understand their own limits, they have to understand what happens when they push those limits, and there can be consequences because of that. There isn't really a lot because, like I said, the powers are going to be coming back if it's just a thing, but they have to really limit themselves, and sometimes that can be frustrating, other times that can really put the plot on pause, but in a good way, because then you're giving other characters a chance to step up. It's a fun one and a common one, but not necessarily the strongest one. Another common one is villain did it. You've just gotten zapped by the latest innator and now you're completely drained of your powers, or you found your kryptonite that the villain has shoved down your throat and now you have to deal with the fact that you might not get your powers back. Maybe the villain has found a way to absorb your powers or even put your powers into the body of somebody else. Now you are completely stuck. This is another one that has a lot of temporary connotations to it. I mean, if your hero is the one being drained by the villain, then odds are the villain is going to be overrun at some point and the hero is going to get their powers back from them. But that does bring a good level of tension because, it also comes with its own motive and drive, mostly revenge, and that can be really fun to write. You really can't go wrong with a good revenge plot. But the point is, now your hero is completely done. They have nothing left in their arsenal, and they have to relearn everything. They are suddenly like, well, what am I without my powers? If I can't take down this guy with my powers, then how the hell am I going to do it without it? And it just brings this whole dilemma, and it also gives other characters a chance to shine. That's the thing, you can have so many characters that are overlooked because the big superpowered one is doing all the hard work, and now they're going to be like, now you need us. Let's see what we can do. The next trope is the accident, and again, similar to Villain Did It, but has a different way of portraying itself. Maybe something bad happened. Maybe there was an explosion, maybe they fell into, I don't know, a vat of a different kind of toxic waste. Maybe they took the wrong potion and now their powers are gone. That something bad happened to them that resulted in the loss of their powers. Now you can take this very literally in an actual accident, like maybe they were damaged. If they have wings, maybe those wings were broken and they can't fly. If they got their powers from magical artifacts, maybe those artifacts were destroyed and now they have nothing. It can manifest differently depending on your story and the style of genre. It often happens at the worst of time, like just before a journey or just before a big fight. And now your character once again has to relearn everything about themselves, and they come to realise just how dependent they were on these powers in the first place, and start to realise maybe this dependency wasn't the most healthiest thing to start with, and this could be a good thing, but they have to relearn everything. Also, there's a different kind of accident in the trauma department, and by that I mean maybe something happened to them that was just so traumatizing that it is not the fact that their powers are gone, it's just now they have a mental block in their mind, which means that they can't access their powers in the same way. For example, accidentally hurting someone with super strength, they are suddenly overcome with this fear of doing it again, and in their mind they can't use their super strength again. But really it's just a mental block that they need to get over. Maybe they feel like they did the wrong spell and now any kind of magic is just sending off red flags in their mind and they can't perform any. It's all a good level of development that they will need to overcome. It's similar to overcoming a fear. Having a loss of power can be a very big fear for a lot of people, and if you're taking this accident and not making it literal but making it mental, then the same rules apply. This is going to be something that they're going to need to get over in their own time, and they might not be able to do it alone. My least favourite trope of how to lose powers is amnesia. Because, you know, I can see where they're coming from. If you can't remember who you are, then you're not going to remember that you have powers and you're going to relearn them slowly. But at the same time, it's just kind of lazy writing. Now, to be fair, I have seen this done right a fair few times. There have been a couple of books I've read where amnesia has stopped someone from knowing who they are and that they do have powers, and they have relearned it and gathered their memories back over time. But a lot of the time it's very cut and dry. I mean, it does create for a good mystery because you are going to be littering like puzzle pieces for everyone to put together later down the line, and it's going to be so much more rewarding when the character realizes, oh, this is a thing I can do, and maybe that realization of power is what triggers their memory. It all depends on your story. But yeah, amnesia can be written really well, but at the same time, when it comes to the power trope, it can be very hit and miss. Finally, you have the choice. This is when the hero has openly decided, I don't want to be this anymore, and they willingly give up their powers. Maybe they pass it on to somebody else, maybe they just decide, I'm not going to use this anymore, or they go through something that forces them to actually have their powers removed from them. And the motive behind this is completely up to you. Again, maybe it could be the fear tactic, where they've hurt someone in the past and they don't want to go through it again, so they'd rather just play it safe and take the powers away to avoid hurting anybody. Maybe they failed to save a city and now they feel like they just don't deserve it. Maybe they are magic based and feel like they're not worthy to be at whatever institute is teaching magic, so they decide to just give it up completely. Many different ways, all up to you. Maybe it's a self-sacrifice that they are given an ultimatum, either give up your powers or lose this person, and they would rather give up their powers than, you know, be without whoever that person is. It can vary and all have a very deep emotional impact that needs to be addressed at some point. It can't just be, yeah, I'm getting bored so I'm giving up my powers, because that's just lazy. This can often happen at the end of a story as a final ultimatum or a heroic sacrifice in some way, because they're giving up something that's a part of them. And again, development that needs to be addressed. Likewise, this could be something that happens at the beginning of the story, that it starts with the character just giving up their powers, not wanting to be a hero of some kind anymore, not wanting to be a magic user of some kind, whatever is in your story, and they decide, no, I'm done, I've hurt too many people, I'm giving it up. And for a while they could feel like this is a good thing, that they are really starting to come to terms with being who they are without the powers. But Usually in stories like that, it means that something is going to happen, someone's going to get kidnapped, there's going to be some kind of peril, and then they realise, oh, actually, I'd be able to fix this if I still had my powers. And the story can branch off between the journey to get the powers back or the journey to figure out how they can do this without powers. Completely up to you. But, you know, the choice is a very morally diverse one, but still a fun one. At the end of the day, no matter which one you pick, each one is going to bring a level of diversity and depth to your story as well as your characters. There's going to be new opportunities for development, there's going to be new opportunities to see where the story is going to go, and also how other people react to this news. Other characters who don't have powers could have a little bit of a smug satisfaction about it, or they could be completely horrified that now their big protector is down for the count. Likewise, you could have the villain just really gloating about it. You could have a loved one that doesn't really care because, you know, you're still you, but the hero's like, no, I'm not me without my powers, and you could have that kind of dynamic. It just branches out the story so much more. But the most important thing to remember is that no matter how your character has lost their powers, no matter how they plan to get it back, if they want them back, you need to really address the emotional impact that this is going to have. For example, if, like, forgetting the whole power situation, if you are a lead guitarist and you have a whole career ahead of you and suddenly there was an accident where you damaged your hands and you can't play anymore, that's your power. Your power has just been taken away from you. Your power of music has been completely, just cruelly taken away. You don't just get over that. You just don't. So it's going to be the same when it comes to powers as well, because that is part of somebody, that is what they were good at, that is what they wanted to do and explore, and now that's gone. That is going to really mess up someone's head. If they're used to this happening, like the it's a thing trope, then, you know, it might not impact them as much. They could just get frustrated, they could get angry at the timing, or they could get angry at themselves and feel like they need to be stronger in order for this to happen less often. But overall, that's not going to have as big an emotional impact as, say, an accident or a choice. At the end of the day, they've lost something, so that is going to maybe trigger the stages of grief. They're going to be angry, they're going to be sad and depressed, they're going to try and, if a villain took something away from them, maybe they're going to try and bargain. There's a lot of steps to take before they can eventually come to that acceptance, and it doesn't always happen in that order. You don't always get angry, then sad, then try to bargain. Sometimes there's no actual right or wrong way of going through the grieving process, whether it's literal, actually, you know, grieving over a person, or grieving over the loss of a part of yourself. It all depends on the character and what they would do in that moment, but they are going to react in some way and have some kind of aftermath that they're going to need to overcome. Denial's a great one, and just relying on muscle memory. If they're used to flying and suddenly they can't anymore, then, you know, they might try and take a run and jump over something. If they have super strength, then maybe they're going to think, oh yeah, I can just knock this door down, and then end up breaking their hand as well as everything else. Maybe if they're magic users, they're going to jump in front of someone to protect them and be like, yeah, you know, shield or whatever, and just end up getting completely blindsided. There's elements for comedic value in there as well. It could be really fun, and just seeing the character flail and try and figure out, well, what is my body anymore, could be a really funny way of going about it. But again, the comedy and the grief need to find a balance along the way. On the other end of the scale, they could actually enjoy it. They could think that this is actually the best thing that's ever happened to them, because they are able to be a person and be seen as a person, not the person with powers. They can blend into society. There's also a chance that maybe if their powers gave them some kind of physical appearance that wasn't the norm, suddenly they're able to be treated as a regular person. They can blend in, they can have a life. It could really be the best thing that ever happened to them. Again, it all depends on your characters and all depends on your story and the world that you've built. If they've passed on their powers to somebody else, or they've seen someone else with powers, then they could become the mentor type, and then that just creates a whole new arc for you to explore. Another thing to consider when powers are being taken away is that this is the potential for a brand new villain. If they aren't able to cope with the loss, if they aren't able to cope with being an average person without powers or without magic or without whatever it is that they had, if they can't overcome it and they are drawn into this fear of being normal and powerless, then they are going to do everything in whatever power they have left to get that energy and that magic and that power back. Sometimes that can lead them down a very dark path, and it can start off with a few immoral choices here and there. It can start off with maybe beating up the wrong person, maybe hunting someone down, but it is going to escalate and escalate, and before you know it, you have a new villain that suddenly everyone else has to deal with, and there's going to be an emotional backlash because this could be their friend, but not anymore. All for the hunt of the power. Because that is the point of having an anti-arc, is when you can have two characters that are going through the exact same thing, but depending on how they react, they can either grow and overcome it and become someone new and become someone stronger, or they can become someone darker, someone resentful, someone angry, and then end up as the villain. It's a fun thing to explore, and I need to look into anti-arcs at some point. That will be another video. The point is, there are many ways to go about a character losing their powers, and you can really have fun with it. It doesn't have to be so black and white as the villain has thrown some kryptonite their way and now they're a weakling. It doesn't have to be the headmaster kicking someone out of magic school and now they have to relearn everything on their own. It can be emotional, it can be traumatic, but it can also be hilarious, and it can be like just open up so many doors for other characters to shine as well, because now your main character who's used to powers has to rely on them, even if they don't want to. Laughs, drama, development, losing powers is a fantastic tool, and we don't really see it as much as we should. But it is a serious tool that does need to be planned out properly. You can't just have someone be the major OP and then have everything taken away and expect a story to come from it. There has to be a full-on planned journey, a full-on plan for their development, for their relationships, for their mental state. How are they going to react? How are they going to try and get the powers back? What is going to happen? You need to plan this out properly. And the main thing to remember is at the end of the journey, whether they've kept their powers, whether they've got them back, or whether they've decided, nope, I'm better off without them, they need to see the world in a new light by the end of the story. If they just suddenly get their powers back and they have learned nothing, they're like, hey, I'm me again, and then go off to do exactly what they were doing before, then they haven't learned anything and the entire journey has been completely pointless. However, if they get their powers back and realize, I was actually capable without these, so I'm going to try and change how I do things. I'm going to try and treat this person with more respect because now I've walked in their shoes. I'm going to try and limit myself so I'm not going through this again. If they've learned something at the end of it, then the entire journey was worth it and fantastic, and that shows development. If things go back to normal, then there was really no point in this entire thing and it feels really cheap. Run with the development, go with it, keep the emotional state in mind. And that's pretty much all I have for you on the topic of losing your powers. Now, I had a lot of fun with this one. I know there are probably many other ways to go about explaining this topic, and I might revisit it at some point, but this is just the bare bones of what I have for you today. I hope it helped in some way. If it did, please let me know. If you have any advice for me, I'd love to hear it. And until the next video, I will see you soon. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Goodbye, my scribblers.